Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mo Baseball and Training Podcast. My name is Eric Mojica, your host for the show. So today our guest is Nick Jensen. Nick is an athletic trainer in the Atlanta Braves organization. He's been there for about 3 years. And he also worked as an athletic trainer with the Kansas City Royals in their minor league system, as well as the Cleveland Indians and the New York Yankees. He earned his bachelor's degree from East Carolina University, as well as the University of Delaware. So in this episode, Nick and I are going to get into a little bit of athletic training and what he does in his day-to-day operations in the Atlanta Braves AAA affiliate team, and just some of his experience and what he likes to do with all the athletes. With that, we just kind of talk about injuries and how we basically do assessments and look at athletes. And he also has a background in strength and conditioning, and so we kind of talk about how we blend all that together to just ultimately help out our athletes. If you listen to the KN Chats podcast, I did an episode with one of his coworkers, Paul Howie, who's a strength and conditioning coach there. And so in this episode, we kind of talk a little bit about just the work that they do together and how they help their athletes out. We'll also touch into some details about injuries and using ice and other things like that. So make sure you tune in towards the middle and end of the show to kind of learn some stuff about all that. And so nevertheless, though, this is episode 1 of the Mo Baseball and Training Podcast. This episode begins right now. All right, and today we have our guest, Nick Jensen. He's an athletic trainer with the Atlanta Braves organization. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Eric. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. So let's just kind of get things started and let you introduce yourself. Tell us about your education, certifications, and what you do and how you got into what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. Love to. So from New Jersey, from there, went to East Carolina University. Was it 2010, 2014. Went to Delaware for grad school, and then kind of got hooked up with the Braves. But on the way up to there, had a couple internships. Had some nice people kind of help me out. First one was the Somerset Patriots, which is a independent league team, independent ball, and that's over in New Jersey as well. So did that 1 year. The athletic trainer at ECU hooked me up. He was a previous AA athletic trainer for the Yankees. So he hooked me up with the Trenton Thunder AA team there. And then in grad school, got some help there. One of our guys at ECU hooked me up. They had baseball, so more baseball in my life. And worked with the baseball team there, then did some Blue Rocks, which is right there in Wilmington, Delaware. That's the high A team for the Royals. And then next, let's see, one after that. Then right after that, I did the Akron Rubber Ducks, kind of helped out for maybe 2 homestands out in Ohio. So in between, school and that, went over there and helped out.
Mm-hmm.
And see.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll say, what was the next question? You want me to? Which one?
Oh,
you want
yeah. What got you into athletic training? Was it just your athletic background, or tell us more about that?
Yeah. I thought it was personal training. So that's always like my first joke I like to say. I thought it was personal training in high school. I was American Council Exercise certified already. It's one of those Polytech courses. So I took that. I thought this was awesome. I like working out. I like doing all this stuff. I like playing baseball. So just went further with that, and come to find out it's nothing like personal training. And athletic training is a little different. It's kind of working with the athletes, working with all the injuries, and that was like my first eye opener. I was like, oh man, this is pretty cool. I've always been someone to have elbow pain or shoulder or whatever, and it was pretty sweet seeing the other side of it and kind of working with the athletes. So stuck with it, and 4 years later, like I said, went to grad school with it.
Okay, and so for our viewers and listeners who were probably up and coming and they don't know the difference between the two, what are the things you can do as an athletic trainer that you can't do as a personal trainer?
So, I mean, personal training, everyone says, there's the guy who, how's your session? Like, you train the guys, right? And then athletic training is more of the rehab, more, you can compare it to PT and kind of say that, but it's mainly to do with the rehabilitation, and you deal with the on-field care, the immediate emergency actions of whatever happens in the field. So, you can say, you look on the football field and you see the guys run out with the water bottles. That's us. There's the guys who we wait there. You wait for the concussions, wait for the acute injuries, and you run the field. You deal with it. You assess whether or not it's something needs referral right away, splint, and get them on the way with EMS, or excuse me, or it's something you can just kind of bring him back in, take care of him, get him back on the field or whatever. Whereas personal training, you're like you've had with Paul and all other people, just work on guys and strength training and performance side and just a little different. I mean, I have my CSCS as well, so I can kind of blend the two. I feel like it helps me have good conversations, which I'm sure we'll get to another question as well. But yeah, definitely a little different. One's performance. I mean, you can make a case for both being performance, but one side more performance, one side's more medical, health related.
Mm-hmm. And so, in your setting in professional baseball, how does all that work? The way that you work with the strength and conditioning coach with Paul and maybe some orthopedic doctors, and even like in the upper level with the major leagues, or how does that whole communication system work? How do you guys all work together?
Yeah. So me and Paul, and first off, Paul's the best. Paul's awesome. We have such a good relationship. Basically, he'll come into me and say, "Hey, this guy was feeling this today," or during his running session before the game or whatever, he'll say, "Yeah, well, his hamstring was going a little bit, blah blah." He'll bring up something, or it'll be something on my end where the guy comes to me and tells me, "Yeah, man, I felt a little something during the conditioning session today," or whatever it is, or hey, this guy has some back issues, and I go over to Paul. But it's basically a constant communication. We're always in the dugout talking, having conversations like, yeah, this guy's hip has been barking. What can I do on my end, as well as what can Paul do on his end? So we just have constant communication saying, hey, if I do the soft tissue, this day, you think you can crush his X, the same day, or can we modify his conditioning, make it more global for blood flow, or whatever have you. We just have good communication there. Same thing with our docs. I mean, docs are pretty cool in the baseball realm. You can kind of text them and call them whenever, and they'll work with you whatever you need, or when they come in, look at a guy real quick and say, yeah, I think you can do this, or I think you can do that, or just give you some guidelines, and you just roll with it and just have constant communication again with the doc. And as long as everyone's honest, the guy usually benefits pretty well.
Okay, cool. And so, just a question that I'm kind of curious about is, so I recently listened to a podcast with Eric Cressy, and he was talking about long distance running for baseball players. And so he kind of mentioned about how you can run into some issues when you have your quote unquote old school coaches who are like your pitching coach, and they're demanding like, hey, you need to be doing this type of running, and you should be doing this type of conditioning, this kind of weightlifting. Just curious how that dynamic is, and do you know any differences with maybe different levels of baseball, like in the professional ranks? Do you know anything about in the college ranks? Like, what are the tendencies that you see with things like that, and if you were in that situation, how would you approach, having those conversations with the coaches and helping create, the best environment possible for these athletes to improve?
Yeah, good question. Professional is definitely different than college, which is definitely different than high school. At the professional level, you have a strength and conditioning coordinator. So he's basically in charge of all the minor leagues, or you have one in the big leagues who is in charge of kind of everybody underneath him as well, depending on how the organization runs it. But they have, their philosophy, and then they just break it down to each level. And like I said before, constant communication. The college level, usually depending on which, D1, D2, D3, depending on the coach, how much time does the coach have to be with that team? Does he have other teams as well? So, I like to set up that with saying, having a good conversation with somebody. So, understand the why. Like Eric said, some things can be dead, and there's other ways to skin a cat. So it's just having a good conversation about, are we still getting the adaptations that we want without injuring the athlete further or putting them in further stress of somewhere. So that just, have a game plan, have a conversation. Our coordinators are pretty awesome with the Braves, and we get some good conditioning in. We're not, don't have to have guys running 40 minutes just to, in that aerobic zone just to get the cardiac hypertrophy. You could have a guy, run this amount of time, and then he's lifting, and all these things combined all day, he spent that exact time in that heart rate range. So he's already getting his, aerobic capacity if that's what you're going after. College was a little different. I'm trying to remember what we did at Delaware, but those guys were, he was working. He'd work from lacrosse guys to football to them. So it's nice having someone 24/7 kind of solely like Paul is, like watching over just watching over all the time and kind of seeing, monitoring guys, giving guys a break when they need a break, or if a guy needs to get pushed, heck yeah, push him a little further today. Now if he's feeling good. But like you said, just having a conversation, knowing the why, knowing what you're trying to get out of it, going back and forth. Obviously, you don't want to step on anybody's toes or egos and say you know more, but having a good conversation like, hey, I think we can do this. What are your thoughts? And then just kind of work back and forth with whomever it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so, what challenges do you tend to see? Let's kind of talk about it from both an athletic training standpoint and a strength conditioning standpoint. When you have a player who got called into the big leagues and gets sent back down to you guys, how do you
Yeah.
guys go about helping them maybe reestablish a routine? Whether it's like, let's say that player A, he was a starter in AAA, and then he gets called up to the big leagues and they put him in the bullpen, and he's there for maybe a couple
Mm-hmm.
weeks and he gets sent back down. How do you guys approach that whole scenario there? Work with them.
So, like you said, it comes back down to reestablishing routines. That is the biggest challenge we face, I would say, is rapport. You just like that. That's the biggest thing I try and get after. Guy goes up, down, traded, whatever, released. You're going to face stuff all the time. So it's just, do I have good rapport with this guy? Does this guy trust me? Comes on in, I don't have to, toe around. Oh, you got sent down. Like, you don't have to toe around it. Everyone knows. You just say, hey, man, I hate to see you, but love to see you, kind of thing, and let's just get after it today. Or how you feeling today? Do you want to crush it? You know what I mean? So it's really just having a conversation with the guy. You don't have to be wary of, yes, he feels crappy because he got just sent down and not making as much money anymore today, but still got to get after it and just try and instill the same thing you would for the guy who's been there the whole year. Just get a routine, get after it. I have to be the same person 24/7. So as long as I don't change as well, then they should get used to that, and you just work with them, see what they got today.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So I wanted to ask you another question that I asked Paul before is, what are the biggest challenges you see with, we talked about communication, how important that is. And so maybe in the lower levels, since you're in AAA, but in lower levels, how you got a kid coming straight out of high school who probably didn't have that strength and conditioning coach around, or a really good athletic training staff where they showed him, the ropes of how to do all his prehab work and getting his body prepared.
Yeah.
What are the biggest challenges you see with that? And on top of that, too, what about foreign players? So players from the Dominican Republic, Venezuela, and whatnot, don't speak English. Like, how does that whole dynamic work in your environment?
So it's definitely different. Like for instance, like when you have an arm care program, you could call it cookie cutter, call it whatever you want, but it's got to be something that can be done from the Latin American player that's coming at age 16, 17. It's got to be able to done by the high school player who maybe he's never done arm care. So it's got to be done by everybody. So you have something simple in place, something that won't hurt a guy. Just give him some maintenance stuff, kind of teach him the routine as we were kind of talking about before. But it goes back to before about having rapport. So, for instance, my first year, if I had 25, 30 guys on the roster, 15 of them were Latin American, maybe 12 of them barely spoke English, and the rest were college kids, newly drafted high school kids. So like for me, I knew I could build rapport with the high school kids, college kids. That'd be easy. We speak the same language, went through the same sort of process. So when I spend all my time with the Latin guys, try and joke around with them, teach them English words, they teach me Spanish words. We joke around. So really just building that rapport. And then, when, someone's having pain or someone's having soreness or whatever, it's kind of your time to throw in some exercise and be like, hey, man, let's try this today. Or let's do X, Y, and Z, just kind of see how it feels. Or, hey, just hang with me for a week. We'll do this program and we'll get it going. Because, most players, they will do their whatever our program is day of throwing. So whenever their foot touches the rubber, we do exercises. So that's already engraved into them. But you always want to do a little bit more when you can. So you just kind of, like I said, have the conversation, work with guys, see what works, see what they know, what they've done before, what they've liked, and then just kind of build on that. And then whenever, you have a moment, you just freaking show them what you think is better and you think can help them a little more, then you just kind of have the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so I got a super vague question, but I'm sure it's going to be really loaded coming from your end. Why do injuries happen, and specifically with baseball players?
Okay. So just like anything, any type of stress or any type of over repetitive motion is going to cause injuries, going to cause breakdown somewhere. So it's always going to happen. But you get immobile guys who try and put their body through extreme forces. Something's going to happen. So whether you have your shoulder moving at 7,000+ degrees per second, or your spine moving half that or whatever it is, something's going to happen. That tissue is moving fast. Um, and you throw, starters about 100 pitches every outing, and 5 days later they throw 100 pitches again. Not to mention, all the warm up pitches beforehand. Not to mention, the bullpen 2 days later when their tissue is not fully recovered already, they're throwing bullpens. So it's kind of like you're just building all this tissue, um, not able to withstand all the forces that are being asked of it. And then, when you have your freaking 5 months off, you hope they take it, but then they go and play winter ball, or they go and play, in high school, they go play showcases because I need to be seen. You know what I mean? So you're not giving your body a chance. So if I was a, cross country runner running 24/7 and never giving my body a break, yeah, I'm going to have stress fractures. I'm going to break down somewhere. So definitely loaded, but obviously repetitive stress anywhere is going to lead to injury.
Mm-hmm. And so, what can we talk about when it comes to understanding somebody's body type? So, I listened to another podcast with Cressy. It was with Dr. Stuart McGill, and so he
Yeah,
was
it's good.
talking about how the type of spines that we have based off of the thickness of the bone and the bone density, how all that influences how our training should be, because that has a huge effect on the elasticity of our muscles, and so having too much or too little of it can cause issues. And so, what can you speak to that?
Well, I can't speak to players' spines. I would say. I mean, I heard that podcast and it was very good. I would say it comes down to. I mean, guys are still going to play. So whether you have Latin American guys coming in, you have guys from Spain, you have guys from America. I mean, you name it, Australia. Um, Guys are still going to play, no matter what, and you just got to deal with whatever they got. You can always say, yeah, we got buckets we could drop a guy into. This guy is whatever, like this extended posture. This guy's flat T spine. This guy is what I don't know, whatever you want to classify it into. You could classify buckets that way, but you still just gotta treat what you see. I mean, guy comes in and has crappy left hip internal rotation, and he's a righty thrower. Probably not gonna be able to rotate on that left hip very well. So you kind of gotta address that. Um, and you only have MRIs and X-rays of your usually top couple pitchers in the organization every year, just as like your formality to make sure you're spending a lot of money. I'll make sure what you're getting. So I think that's actually an idea, but you definitely want to start looking at how can we classify guys, because right now, in my opinion, everything's kind of everything's kind of cookie cutter. Like we have one program, you do this, and a bunch of organizations. How's this program going to work for this guy? How's this program going to work for that guy? Yes, you can make modifications, and that's why having Paul around, you can make those modifications. But it'd be nice to have, hey, guys that are extended postures can do this, or guys with, left hip internal rotation, like I said, and righty throwers, or right hip internal rotation with lefty throws. And I mean, you can drop guys in maybe buckets that way and design a different program as well.
Mm-hmm. Right on. And so, just to kind of go into like what kind of assessments do you use? What kind of tools are in your toolbox per se? And how do you use those tools to analyze all your athletes?
Yeah. So for the most part, guys injured, yes, I'll go through a full screen. Usually, I take them through some sort of like PRI type screen ish, and kind of move all the joints, almost like FRA, functional range assessment as well. So you basically see what are the joints doing, what's the rib cage doing, what are the hips doing, what's the spine looking like. Um, you take it through there, and you can't say yes, it was 100% whatever that caused your injury, but if we're attacking all these good things and making this guy quote unquote a better mover, then maybe he'll start feeling a little better. But I mean, whatever works. So whether it's PRI, FMS, whatever 3-letter word you want to throw at it, you just kind of look at a guy pretty globally, and then you can kind of narrow it down. Yes, if the guy's right shoulder hurts, I'm gonna touch the right shoulder and work and look at that, and then I'll move down and see, okay, how are his scaps moving, potentially what's overactive, what's not overactive, how does his T-spine look, how does his, like I said, left hip look, how does his rib cage look like, is it pretty flared on that side, is it whatever. So you can take a pretty global approach and then kind of come down like, okay, I know you hurt in the front of the shoulder, I'm going to look at the front of the shoulder, and then you look out and kind of use whatever you got to to help you narrow in some exercises that'll hopefully make a change.
Okay. And so here's a question that I always like to ask people who work with athletic populations and with injuries is, what's your take on ice and using like ibuprofen, stuff like that, as far as trying to bring down inflammation in the body? What's your take on that? What is your personal opinion? And what do you know?
My personal opinion, is that I'm not an ice fan. I'm not an ibuprofen fan. I just think too many guys are dependent on ibuprofen, and the stomach and colon effects later on in life not worth a change I can make with nutrition, most likely, or with a nice exercise session or something along those lines, or even like a Mark Pro, just something you can throw on and do something there. Ice as well. I mean, if a guy wants ice, I'm not going to mess his routine, especially if the ice works here. But I'm not going to prescribe ice. I think some of the studies coming out now are saying, delays recovery, delays muscle force production, stuff like that. So it's, if you can stay away from it, I'd stay away. But I do like it for contrast, and I just think having a why for everything. So, if I said, "Oh, I'm doing for contrast," I think it's closing the blood vessels, opening the blood vessels, and that wouldn't be my why. I would say I think it's doing some mechanoreceptor type, analgesic effects on the skin, and hopefully getting some pain and relief through that. And that's the reason I would prescribe it, not for opening and closing blood vessels and getting rid of swelling. But yeah, like I said, long-winded answer for saying not a huge fan.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I'm really interested in always asking that question, because I think I spent my 4 years of college baseball trying to figure out, okay, like, when is ice working for me? When is heat? And I kind of came to a point where, well, in my mind, it was like a science, right? Like, I'm like, yeah, I feel really good, when I ice, only the day of that I threw. And then after that, I'm trying to get a lot of movement going. And that worked a lot for me. I knew other guys that love doing ice baths and stuff like that. And so I recently started working at a neurology-based therapy clinic, and so I'm drinking water from a fire hose, learning all this neurology-based information. But something interesting that you brought up was talking about mechanoreceptors, and how there's parts of our brain that, when they get a certain amount of feedback, it can kind of help maybe regress types of pain. And so I've been able to find that with some lower back issues that I've had for myself, and finding some correlations of certain movements in my thoracic spine, my cervical spine, to where, I'm kind of opening up some channels, and it kind of helps reduce some pain in my lower back. And so, just in my old methods, it was always, all right, let's get some ice, lay down, maybe put some stim on it. That's kind of what my trainers had me do when I was in college. And so, just interesting stuff that I always like to kind of pick out, what people think with that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Of certain movements in my thoracic. Well, let's take a break right now, and then we'll be right back, all right?
Let's do it.
And now a call to the bullpen. Hi there, my name is Eric Mojica, your host for the Mo Baseball and Training podcast. I'm a baseball freak, and I have a tremendous passion for kinesiology and all sciences related to human performance. The purpose for Mo Baseball and Training is to share free content connecting you to various professionals in the health and sports world with one particular interest: people who love to talk about baseball. Make sure to click on the subscribe button and share the podcast and blog with your baseball friends and family. To find more MBT content, visit the webpage at mobaseballandtraining.com. Learn, train, optimize. Mo Baseball and Training. And now, back to the show. All right, and we're back. So, Nick, I wanted to ask you about as a whether if you're a strength and conditioning coach, personal trainer, athletic trainer, whatever you can be, um, wearing multiple hats is what we do, right? We don't just write workouts. We don't just watch somebody work out. We wear a lot of hats. We're basically friends.
Yeah.
We're giving people advice. We're there to listen to them, and so I just wanted you'd like to share with us, like your relationships with players in the past and currently, and like what gets you really fired up about being an athletic trainer.
Sweet. Yeah. Good question. I say what fires me up the most is just it's little things, man. It's just getting a guy on the table and doing exercises or some soft tissue, and then have him get up and be like, his eyes wide and go, man, I didn't think I was gonna be able to throw today. And, and then he's super jacked. He's able to get back out there again. Or one of my favorite ones, a guy with some back pain on rotation. He was hiding it for a while. It says it's been happening since spring training. Um, Worked on him for a little bit. I couldn't, about a week, couldn't get any changes. He saw a doctor. Doc prescribed some stuff. Said, hey, work on this, that, whatever. Couldn't get any changes. Then one day, I racked our brains, went back and forth. I did another exercise, and it magically went away. I don't know what I did, but it went away. And after that game that day, he comes to me, high five him. We just won. Gives me a big hug and goes, "Thank you." You know what I mean? And so it's like stuff like that just freaking gets me going. But no, man, like all little things, just having a conversation in the dugout, and having a deep conversation or something like that during the middle of a game, or joking about whatever, just being part of the crew, hanging out. Baseball relationships are something special. So you see a guy that got released the year before, and you're playing against him this year. It's sweet. You like run across the field, say hey, nothing's changed. Just relationships, man. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm assuming then a lot of fun stuff probably happens on the road. You got any fun stories to share with us?
I would say, yeah. Um, I mean, you get some weird stuff. Obviously, like being the medical guy, you get called at all hours of the night. Whether it's something stupid or it's something. I will say one funny one. That's obviously appropriate for everybody. We had a pitcher who worked. He worked with our pitching coach all day. They worked on a slider. Goes, this is how you hold it. This is how you throw it. Blah blah. It went in the bullpen, did it, whatever. The next day, he comes back in, starts throwing again. And he's like, "What the heck are you throwing?" And he like, "Show me." And he's like holding the ball completely different. And he asks him, "The hell did you learn that?" And he goes, "YouTube." And the dude spent, the coach spent 45 minutes working with him. Comes in next day on YouTube, and now he's throwing something completely different. So it's like you just see silly things. It's like, well, why am I wasting my breath here?
Yeah. And so, do you ever encounter things like that? Like, because I know where I played in college, there's guys who are talking about, oh, like I injured my arm with this, and then they're like, oh, I can't throw today. I'm not going to practice, and then post practice, like somebody's throwing a football. That same guy's throwing a football, or
Yeah.
doing something really stupid. Like, obviously, at a professional level, I'm assuming you're going to see a lot more guys that are more responsible on that end. But do you ever find yourself like having to remind maybe some athletes or some really young guys like, hey man, like you got to be taking care of this, or like showing them the ropes of like what it means to really take care of yourself? Like any experiences on that end?
Yeah. At my level right now, guys love golfing. They almost love golfing more than they like playing baseball. Some probably other way around. So one of the first questions I'll get is, "Hey, when can I go? When can I go swing the golf club again?"
Maybe some athletes or some really young guys like, hey man.
Give them an answer, but officially I have to give them an answer. So it's kind of like you got to teach. You got to work with them. Like I said, as long as you have a good rapport with them, they'll basically they'll trust you. And they'll be honest with you and say, "Yeah, I didn't go or anything like that today." But you just got to subtly remind them. Sometimes you just got to play dad. You just got to harp on them. Um, Not my favorite part, but you just got to do it sometimes and just nag a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But no, I mean, guys are pretty good. I mean, other than golfing, our team doesn't really throw a football. We're not allowed to play basketball at the gyms. If they get there, it's supposed to be a fine. Guy can roll an ankle or do something. But I've also been a part of a team where a guy rolled an ankle putting on his pants. So you really can't trust athletes sometimes. So anything they can do, I'm sure they'll find a way.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so for any of our young athletes that are watching this, do you have any advice for them as far as like when it comes to injuries or preventing injuries, like what kind of things should young baseball players be doing?
Yeah, that's easy, man. Two things. Switching sports, definitely play other sports. So as many sports as you can play, freaking as soon as baseball season ends, whatever's after baseball season, jump on that. Well, guys who ran cross country, then played football, then wrestled or whatever, just 3, 4 sports. I mean, there's research coming out in basketball at least saying that guys are lasting longer on the field, they're doing this, and they're playing longer. So there's something to it. Besides that, don't play like all year round. So yes, you can play. Like I said, switch sports, but don't continue to play winter ball or sorry, I'm talking professional baseball. Don't go like playing showcases. You'll get seen. And if you're barking, shoulders barking, elbows barking, don't push through it. That's not something like you will get seen. So I would say just listen to your body and play multiple sports. Probably my 2 biggest things I can give.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can totally relate to that because I grew up in SoCal. So, yeah, I was pretty much pitching, every single weekend from January to December. And, I felt fine. Like there were days where like my elbow was kind of bugging, stuff like that. But something I wanted to ask you too is like, how do you listen to your body? What does that even mean? Because like, I feel like I sometimes work with like 14-year-olds and I'm like, hey, you got to listen to your body. You got to pay attention to what you're feeling in your arm and stuff. And so what would be your advice to like how to get somebody to understand that better and how to process that information of what they're feeling?
So I would say first listen to whether it's soreness or whether it's pain. And if they don't understand the difference, because some Latin guys don't understand the difference, or some even high school kids who haven't really felt stuff before, they really can't tell the difference. So you got to ask them, if you're working out, blah, 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 and, that soreness you feel after, does it feel like that, or does it feel like I'm kind of nervous about throwing it a little harder? Well, it's kind of differentiating, but if someone, at the younger levels don't feel like, they can give it their all, I just don't see a rush. They got the rest of their life in there. They got puberty to hit. They got weight room coming up. They got a lot, and they got eat and growth spurts. They got a lot of things coming that are going to affect that velocity. So I don't think chasing numbers young and pushing through things that maybe is painful or more sore than normal is really worth it, in my opinion. But like I said, it's hard because, like I said, some kids don't really understand the difference. So you kind of just, maybe as a parent, you got to put your foot down, like, yeah, maybe we don't play today. Maybe we don't pitch. Maybe go play, third base, or maybe we first, or go play right field, or maybe just don't go pitch today.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right on. All right, Nick. Well, just wanted to have you sign us out and also let us know, how can we find you? Social media, any websites, email, anything?
Yeah. Email, I would say ndj.jensen@gmail.com. That's probably my easiest one. This way it doesn't get confused all work stuff as well. I have social media, but I really just post travel pictures. I mean, you're welcome to follow if you like seeing pictures of Peru or freaking, Ireland or something like that. So I think you said like that. I'll probably be in the show notes, but NDJ_Jensen, and that's on Instagram. I don't have a Twitter. I don't have Facebook. That's honestly about it.
Okay.
Kind of off the grid a little bit.
Yeah, it's a thing everyone's getting into, but yeah, not me. I'm a personal trainer. I'm trying to put some stuff out there.
You're kind of forced to do that.
Yeah. All right, Nick. Well, really appreciate your time, man, and I'll be in touch with you, man.
Sweet, Eric. Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.
All right.
That's our interview with Nick Jensen. If you'd like to contact Nick, check out the show notes below, and please feel free to leave us all your comments and questions. If you like the show, please make sure to subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel, where you can access more interviews and other baseball and training content from MBT. You can find our social media content on Instagram and Facebook at Mo Baseball and Training, as well as our Twitter page at CoachMo_MBT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the blog for more awesome content at mobaseballandtraining.com. Once again, thank you for watching and listening. We have more podcast interviews coming your way, so stay tuned. This is the Mo Baseball and Training Podcast.